Good morning. Okay, ladies, we've got a challenge here. We have 7,000 highly caffeinated women, and we've got to have a 25-minute conversation about world domination, okay? So you've got the bios on the powerhouses we have sitting here on stage, and I can tell you, as we were prepping for this, we need about 2 days because there's got a lot of wisdom up here, but we're going to do what women have to do and just dive in. So I'm going to kick it off. All right, Tyler is truly, I don't know if I'm allowed to say a badass, but she is.
Yes, you are.
As our 14-year-old said, she's the lady who's going to take over Lululemon. Like, she's dominating the markets. So Tyler, kick it off with women. We're starting businesses at twice the rate of men. So why is that? What's happening?
Cool. I think it's quite simple. If you look around, 50% of the population, give or take, are women. And so that's something that I realized having grown up wearing Nikes and Under Armours when I was a young hurdler. As a competitive athlete, I was like, I want this outfit that makes you feel faster, stronger, like you're going to cross the finish line first. But as I got older, activity took on a whole new meaning. And I woke up and I was like, that's not speaking to me anymore. So I realized that by focusing on a personal pain point, as a woman, I was my own customer. And I could speak to women in similar situations to myself better than these traditionally male-dominated activewear brands. So I encourage people who are starting companies to really lean into their personal experience, because there's a lot more people like yourself out there.
And what about women in corporate America? Do you think that it's not fitting what women need, so they're going out on their own?
I think there's a lot more success stories out there, and this is a great example of bringing communities of women doing all sorts of really inspiring things together to connect. And so that connection becomes the catalyst. For example, there's a company called The Wing that you guys might have heard of, but they are focused on creating environments to bring women together. And so this trend in terms of focusing on communities and connection are really, it's the catalyst for more people, more women having the courage to start their own thing.
Mm-hmm. And Renata, you work in the investment space, so you see a lot about what this looks like for women, but women are not getting the venture capital. So we're starting businesses at twice the pace, but we're not getting the money. So what is happening?
Yeah, and this is a really unfortunate thing, because when you look at the venture capital firms, only 9% of the people that are making decisions are women. And it's really hard to relate to things that you don't live and you don't understand. So when a Tyler comes in with her problem and she's talking to a man who is in their 50s and really doesn't relate to her experience, it falls flat. And we're trying to change that. I'm one of the founders of All Raise, which is the community coming together and saying, let's double the number of women who are decision makers in venture capital firm, because we need more venture capital dollars going into female-founded companies. Today, only 14% of the dollars go to female-founded companies, and we want to change that. But what to do until we get to that point where the boardroom and the decision makers look different? I think we need to frame the story in a way that investors understand. Numbers don't lie, data doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. So talk about how big your market is, how important that market is, how fast that market is growing, and talk about the flywheel, the leverages that your business are generating. And then they're gonna go back and think about, oh my God, this is a really incredible fundamental, and this is much more interesting than a lot of the things that I have, or I have invested, or I have seen. So people are gonna lean in. And there's a little bit of education, so meet them where they are until we change the faces and the hearts of the boardroom.
Nina Shaw, this is pretty awesome that she's here. So Nina was part of organizing the Time's Up Fund to work with the women in Hollywood as they were having their moment around Me Too. And it included a lot of different kinds of women with a lot of different perspectives. So talk to us a little bit about what that was like, working with all those different types of women and what we need to be doing to champion each other.
It has truly been one of the most transformative experiences of my life. And I think that everything that happened to us leading up to the public exposures of a year ago really prepared us to respond in the way that we did. Imagine this, you walk into a conference room and there are a series of name tags, folded name tags. And there's Reese Witherspoon, and Natalie Portman, and Tracy Ellis Ross, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And there's Nina Shaw. But it was such a call to arms. We decided that we were not going to let the events define us and define our business. Instead, we were going to respond in a way that showed our own agency, our own ability to take advantage of a horrible situation and turn it into a positive. And our greatest inspiration, one of our greatest inspirations in this, was a letter from the Alliance of Women Farm Workers, women who have been organizing for the last 40 years in support of themselves and their families. And they said to us, "Dear sisters." And I think that's really the clue to it. They spoke to us as people who had suffered what they too had suffered in their work environments. And what was so clear in the writing of that letter is that there was really no difference between those women who were working every day in the fields and women in Hollywood. Because at the end of the day, we were all suffering abuses of power. So to be in that room was to be energized. To be in that room was to understand your own power and your own ability to start your destiny. And we said, and on the last point, we said something. We said, we're going to respond to that letter because we're polite, but we're going to respond in a big way. And our big way was called the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, and to date, we've raised $22 million. To fund lawsuits and to otherwise support women and other people who find themselves victims of abuses of power in the workplace.
So Tyler, you've been named one of Forbes' 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. So besides making the rest of us look like we've accomplished nothing at our age, I want to hear from you about what have you learned as a female entrepreneur? What's been unique to that experience?
I don't know if it's unique to being a woman, but leadership is really hard. And so something I've learned is it's all about progress, not perfection. There's this book called Radical Candor that I suggest everyone read. It's about challenging directly, so speaking honestly, openly, transparently, but personally caring. And I found that as a female leader, we're really good at this. And early on, so I started OV 5 years ago now, I was starting to hire for experience, and I had these folks joining the team that were a lot older than me, younger than me, a whole, from various backgrounds. And I would get feedback sometimes that I was being like too intense or brazen, and I think that's something that if we don't, take a moment to think about how that can harness that power, it can be viewed as like bitchy in a sense. And so over the course of the
it's okay, you can say that.
Yeah, bitchy, what the hell? But literally, people would say that. And so I've really focused on, as a leader, leaning into our strengths as females in terms of being sensitive and in tune to people's feelings, but feeling confident and bold in being direct and being sincere. So that book has been extremely, extremely powerful for myself. Read it, Radical Candor.
Cool. So Renata, money. Women sometimes are weird talking about money, and we're not good at asking for money. And I'm curious, between just us and your 7,000 closest friends here, we tend to use our own funds when we start businesses instead of asking for money. And I want to know, why is it a good idea to go get money?
So I love how just women are scrappy, and women are gritty, and women don't stop. And I think a lot of people just see an opportunity in something that they're passionate about, and they'll just go start it in any way that they can, and they know that raising money is going to be hard. So I applaud the initiative and starting. But I do think that sometimes women have problems asking for what they need.
That's a better way to say it, yeah.
And I find so many entrepreneurs that say, I'm gonna go raise, I don't know, $1 million. And I say, okay, what are you gonna do with that $1 million? And, oh yes, I'm gonna become profitable and I'm gonna have a business that's going and I'm gonna be modestly hiring. And they don't, I said, okay, but what if I gave you 3? What would you do differently? And 5, what would you do differently? Oh, then I would get into this other category. I would hire a bigger team. I would do this and I would do that. Women are not asking for what they need. Mm-hmm. When men are thinking about world domination, we're thinking about survival, we're thinking about getting by, and we need to think bigger. And we really need to build things that scale. So really think about if money wasn't a constraint, what would I do? What would I build? And if I'm trying to build something big, what are the resources I need? And try to come up with a story to go for that. And I know that it's easier said than done, but at some point it catches up with you because you either bootstrap too much or you raise in too little, unconventional ways, and then people look at you like, oh, this is too strange, or maybe you don't have ambition because you haven't built the foundation. So really think big from the beginning, and then try to cobble that way from there, but ask for what you need.
That Renata raises such an incredible point here. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. And if you do ask, the worst that anyone can say is no. And because you ask, there's a chance they'll say yes. And I think that's the thing that we don't focus on enough. We were counseled early on at Time's Up that we would have to raise a minimum of $10 million. And remember, we did all this in a 60-day period. We would have to raise a minimum of $10 million or we shouldn't think about doing the fund. And when I heard that number, we were all sitting in this conference room and I remember thinking, oh, $10 million. And the inimitable Shonda Rhimes said, $10 million, that's nothing. And so we decided that we started putting together a list of people we would ask. And we agreed that the minimum we would ask for was $500,000, but we wouldn't ask anyone for less than $2 million. $500,000 was where we would settle. And I remember the last moment, and we were about to launch, we were going to be, there was a big New York Times article coming out about us. And I remember just sitting outside a Sephora in a mall. And I was on the phone with someone, and I said, you got a half an hour, $500,000, and you're going to see your name in the New York Times tomorrow. And if not, you're going to be reading about other people who stepped up and got counted first. And so this gentleman called me back in a half an hour, because I had given him an hour. He called me back in a half an hour, and he said, Nina, I can't get in touch with everyone in my firm, but what if I agree to $500,000 right now, and then I'll try to get you another $500,000 by January 1st. And I said, okay, I can take that. But before that, I must say, although I'd started my own law firm and been in business at that point for 28 years and had done very, very well for myself, I think that was the first time that I was actually brave enough because I had something that I was so passionate about, and I was thinking about all those people who would be helped by that fund. Yep. And it made me so brave. And you have to find that thing that makes you brave. Yep. Your inspiration, Tyler, what you've done in your business. Yep.
With the funding process for myself, you've got to be able to, or willing to walk away. But I think Forbes at some point had quoted, I think that they had said I had gone to 70 investors and gone in there with my pitch as this scrappy little girl. That might be an exaggeration, but whatever. I think the point for me was you got to go at a vulnerable stage to get good. Because early on I showed up with my first page of my deck saying, I want to build the next great activewear brand. And they look at me like, but that already exists. And I would take every instance where I would get feedback on a pitch deck and fold that into the next version of it. So starting with little experience, I was very open to getting it in front of people before it was perfect, you know? And I think that's super, super key, is letting yourself lean into the vulnerability. And maybe it was 70 conversations, but it worked. And so that persistence, that courage, that openness and willingness to be vulnerable was ultimately how we raised money for OV.
Well, and I know it sounds hard, but in some ways it's depersonalizing it. We take it as a personal criticism when we don't get the raise we want or the money we want. And a lot of times women are great at asking for money for other people.
Right.
You know, they're great fundraisers, but at the same time when it's asking for our own business or running for office, I see this a lot, that we struggle because we think somehow it's a reflection of us. And so this money conversation is really important, but I am going to tip the organizers off. Our time clock isn't working, so we'll keep going all day. Just wanted to let y'all know so we know when to end the conversation. And so, Nina, I also want to ask about just the statistics around pay equity and this idea of women asking for what they need or what they want to make. Because women entrepreneurs typically underpay themselves compared to their male counterparts. So what's going on there?
Yeah. The pay equity issue, I think, is really more so than almost any other issue facing women in the workplace, the most important issue, because once we get paid at the rate our work is really valued, it will change our entire lives and it will change the lives of our families. Many of you know the statistics. White women make 70 cents on the dollar for white men, and then African American women, you know, make less, and you get to Latinx who make 50 cents. I mean, you know those numbers. But let me ask you to look at those numbers in a slightly different way. Over the course of your working lifetimes, 40 years or so, you will, if you are making 70 cents on the dollar to your colleague, you will leave $1.4 million on the table. You will take home less in the way of Social Security benefits because those benefits are calculated on your salary. You will be unable to afford to support yourself in your old age if you do not otherwise have someone who is contributing to your support. You will have less for your children. You will have less for your aged parents. These are really much bigger issues than I think we allow ourselves to think. And the worst part of it for me personally is that you will be subsidizing someone else's salary. That colleague who does the same job as you and makes 30 cents more, you took that out of your paycheck to give to them. And if that doesn't motivate you, because if somebody had their hand in my wallet, I'd be pretty upset. So I want you to think of it in a much bigger way, that when you fight for equal pay, you're fighting for what you are owed but you are also fighting a much larger battle. You're fighting for your children, for your parents, for your security in old age, for your ability to start businesses. These are all the things, and these are all the reasons why this issue of pay equality is paramount if we are going to be entrepreneurs, if we are going to have safe, secure lives, and frankly, if we are going to be respected in the workplace.
So, Renata, if there was one piece of advice you would offer women who are looking to raise money, what would it be?
Just one?
Well, I won't count. Go ahead.
I think is be confident. Believe in yourself, because if you don't, nobody else will. You're doing a convincing job. First job is going to be getting money. Later, you're going to have to turn into a leader, and you're going to have to convince your employees to follow you, and you're going to have to convince people to buy your product, and you're going to have to keep on convincing. So I think first and foremost, believe in yourself. And be your authentic, real self, because this is where magic really comes out. Like, I see so many women trying to be like men or be like somebody else. That somebody else already exists and already has a place in the world. Each and every one of us is special, and we bring something to the table. So dance to your music. Like Tyler said, be vulnerable. I'm so excited that Brené Brown's going to be speaking here today. She's one of my idols. I'm going to be like a total fangirl. She made a huge difference. And it took me a while to get comfortable in my skin and owning up to who I am. And it changed everything. So that's the advice that I don't give up, be confident in yourself, believe in yourself, and be yourself.
Well, and Tyler, you've done this. You've raised money. So you talked about focus. What advice would you give to other women?
Well, building on your confidence piece real quickly. So we have a team of 154 people here in Austin. We recently moved from New York to Austin because we believe it's one of the most recreational cities. But a big part in doing this was in New York, we were, on top of, below, next to all of these companies that started to look and feel the same. And so what I realized was when I really looked inwards and kind of fed this creativity around the vision, around creating the next great activewear brand, removing myself and creating my own playbook, my own rules to the game was critical to success. And so a few things that I've created, and they're part of the way that we run the company, are this. So when things are kind of strange at the company, I tell the team, let's change the chemistry. And we literally get up and start jumping jacks. And it works with our company because it's all about endorphins making you happy and more confident. And I really believe in it. I mean, it's kind of nice right now because it's cold.
I love it. Let's all do it. Yeah.
And so that's literally kind of like an operating principle within the company that people, when something feels funky, they use that. And so it becomes this rule to go back to. Another is being human, not superhuman. And so that's kind of a game, or a rule to our game into leaning into, we make mistakes and we're open and we're okay with that. And so a lot of building the confidence in myself as a leader has been creating my own playbook, my own rules to the game. And almost not in a naive way, but putting blinders on in a sense to really protect and drive this vision with focus.
So what I heard is lean into the awkward. Just own the awkward. Just get over it.
Yep.
So we all have that. No, that was amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so sadly the time clock's working now, which means we're going to have to wrap it up here soon. But I want to end with this. Nina, what trends are you seeing that give you hope for where women are going?
I am just so thrilled at the way young women are coming into the workplace. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming because they're like really demanding. But you have to sit back and when the younger women in my law firm come in and they're like, we want this, and I'm okay, well, let's talk about it. And then when they leave the room, I am just grinning from ear to ear because they have this sense of themselves and this ability to ask for what they want that just makes me feel like all the work that I have done in all these years has been worthwhile. So I think that's a great trend, and I see it in Tyler especially, that can do, nothing can stop me from doing what I want to do. But also I think I am seeing women, and I see this especially, this was so clear to me in Time's Up, this sisterhood, this notion of Hollywood actresses started telling each other how much money they made. Oh my God, guys were calling me, you know that number? Because it was keeping us in the dark, which allowed them to control what they paid. So that transparency, that coming together, I think is a huge thing. So talk among yourselves. If you're a group of women at a job and you think you're being underpaid, ask each other what you make. And then find that one guy who will tell you what he makes. And use it to your advantage.
What about you, Renata?
I'll double down on the sisterhood. Like, women being there for each other, lifting each other up. This is new. I mentioned All Raise, and this is something that's happening in the tech venture capital community, but it's women that came together and said, we want to change things. And the only way we change things is if we're successful, if we're working and it works. So let's help each other be successful, and that's changed everything.
Love it.
Count on each other.
I think Well, for instance, I make a concerted effort on social to respond to people who, put intention into what they ask. There's some phenomenal questions or just comments that come into my DMs, and I would encourage you, if you're looking for a mentor or a peer group, just ask. It's like having the direct relationship with our customer. You can have that direct relationship with someone that inspires you. They may or may not get back quickly, but I know that I have a number of folks that I continue to give advice to and get advice from purely through social. It's simple.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. Should we
Thank
end with
you.
jumping jacks? Because that was amazing. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.